Welcome YouTubers. Welcome to my channel, KMTrainer. My name is Michael Candolo. I'm a 20 years veteran of the IT industry. I'm a certified Microsoft professional with various Microsoft certificates to my name. This is the first of a series of videos that will take you right on my journey to the wonderful world of information technology. Today we start off by showing you how to install and make a computer a domain controller in a Server 2016 environment and the configurations that come with it. In future videos, I'm going to show you how to implement, install, and administer Microsoft Endpoint Protection Manager, formerly known as System Center Configuration Manager for managing large group of computers and devices. I will also install and administer Microsoft Exchange Server, which is the primary Microsoft emailing platform used by companies and governments across the globe. Then times allows, we'll go through the implementation of SharePoint Server and many other top-of-the-range Microsoft applications such as SQL Server used in institutions and governments worldwide. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and let me know what you think. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell to be up to date as I release new videos. Methods and people may change, but the goals and framework are fixed. With great power, they say, comes great responsibility. As you become a Windows Server administrator, you have a lot of responsibilities that are entrusted to you. Then let me show you how my setup looks like. Okay, the domain that I'm using is KMTrainer.co.za, and my setup will be consisting of one server, which is KMT DC1. It's gonna be having 6 GB of RAM, 100 GB of hard drive of space, and then we'll have another domain controller that I'm gonna be calling KMT DC2. As you can see, with 2 GB of RAM, 50 gig of space, and then we'll have also KMT MECM, which is the one that we're going to be using for the implementation and installation of Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. So this one will be having 12 gig of RAM, 200 gig of hard drive space, and then we'll have 2 clients. So we'll have client 1, KMT W101 and KMT W701. So the W7 will be consisting of Windows 7, and the W101 will be having Windows 10. Why? Because in certain companies they are still using Windows 7 up to now, even though Microsoft is no longer supporting it. So we're just using it into my lab for testing purposes. So our router has an IP address which is 192.168.0.1. That's also the one that we're gonna be using as a default gateway in our configuration. And all these computers will be virtual machines as we deploy them via VMware, but you can also use Hyper-V for the same purpose. In this case, I've chosen to use VMware. I just want to mention to you that I'm running a physical Supermicro Tower server with 36 GB of RAM. So this is the setup that I'm using right now. But for time's sake, I have gone ahead and made a template of Server 2016 OS. From that template, I'll pull machines as per my setup. So I've made a template which consists of Windows Server 2016. As you can see, the link is there if you want to download the OS from Microsoft website. It's actually an evaluation OS that's going to be using for 180 days. So it's quite a lot of time for you to do some practicals. So I've made a template just for time's sake. And as I said, I'm using VMware for virtualization. But you can also use Hyper-V, Citrix, and other virtualization technologies out there. So, but now for the purpose of this training, I'm using VMware Workstation. So I'm going to open, right-click on my shortcut, VMware shortcut. So I'm going to run it as administrator. Click yes. And in there, I have a template that I made already from Windows 2016 OS with all the latest patches. So this is my template. So you can see I have a template called KMT temp 16 and KMT W10 temp and KMT W7 temp. So I've already made the templates for Windows 2016, Windows 10, and Windows 7. So from this template, I'm gonna pull the machines that will be running on our environment. So now for KMT temp 16, I'm gonna select the virtual machine, go to VM, manage, and then clone. So we're using clone. Clone is actually making copies of the same machine. So I'm going to click next, current state, yes, next. And here I'm not going to create, because you have two options. We have a linked clone and a full clone. So a linked clone, for it to work, the main clone, the main machine from which you're cloning from, has to be on. So for it to work. So if you want to run these two machines, the original virtual machine has to be running. Now, in this instance, we're going to be running, we're going to create a full clone, so a full copy. So click next. So I've already made folders. Let me show you what I've made folders for these virtual machines. So it's actually on another partition. So I've made a folder called VMs. So that's where we are. So this is where you see currently it's empty. So that is where our first DC, our first clone will be residing. And then we're going to match up the name of the clone, the cloned machine, the cloned virtual machine, with the name of the folder where it sits or where it resides. So I'm going to go and browse and go to data store, VM, KMT DC1. So I'm gonna copy the name so that it can match the name of the virtual machine. So now I'm gonna click finish. So we're gonna wait for a while until the cloning process completes. So while it's doing its things, we can actually talk about other stuff. So in the meanwhile, as you can see, while the cloning is happening, so for our first DC, which is KMT DC1, we said we're gonna have 6 GB of RAM and 100 gig of hard drive space. But now when you see at the clone, we're having actually 4 gig of RAM. So we're gonna increase this to 6 gig so that we can actually match the status of our setup. And we're gonna do the same with all the 3 other servers that we're gonna clone from the same template. And also we're gonna be doing the same with the template, the Windows 10 template and the Windows 7 template. So we have physical servers and virtual servers. Our physical server is actually the one that I'm actually running right now. So I'm having a physical server with 30 GB of RAM, and on top of that, on that physical server, I've installed an hypervisor. In this case is a VMware Workstation, and you can also use Hyper-V. So these are the two flavors, but in this training I prefer to be using VMware Workstation. So I've loaded or installed VMware Workstation on this physical server, and that has actually allowed me to have a way of running now virtual servers on that physical server. So after cloning, because otherwise if you want to join this machine that is cloned to the domain, there are going to be conflicts. So for us to avoid that, so that we can have out of the box experience, what we do after cloning the machine or after cloning the machine is to sysprep the machine. So we sysprep it so that we can actually be able to have a new SID. So each and every machine that we're cloning is actually gonna give us the possibility of being unique once we connect it to the network. So it's coming out of box experience. So that's when we'll be sysprepping. We'll be sysprepping each and every machine that we're cloning. So as we're going to be having 3 servers, so once we copying or cloning the first server, which is KMTDC1, we're going to clone the second one, KMTDC2, and KMTMECM. So once we clone all these 3 machines, we're going to sysprep them, and then they're going to be ready for whatever task we're going to assign to them. Okay, so we have different types of servers. We have DHCP servers, we have web servers, we have file servers, we have DNS servers, we have database servers, we have domain controller servers. This is actually what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to make our KMT DC1 a domain controller. So it's going to be a domain controller server. It's going to service the entire network. So there is a whole range of servers. But the real end goal of servers is to service something. To service the end users, to service an application, to service a website, to service whatever you want it to service based on your own requirements. So a server is going to be set up to have a particular server function to go provide a service to some end devices or end users. But in most or all corporate environments, you'll find rack servers, which are commonly used in corporate environment, data centers. You might also find tower servers, but not quite often used. Mostly rack servers in terms of saving space. In my environment, I have a physical Supermicro tower server, which I'm actually running right now. And if you look at the virtual servers and the physical server, you will see that the cost of physical servers is always costly, and there is no redundancy built into them. A virtual server is in fact a physical server running what is called a hypervisor operating system, such as the one that I'm running right now, VMware, Hyper-V, or Citrix. And we also have this big topic of today, cloud. You have servers in the cloud. We have like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure or Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud. But the two most commonly flavored, you look at Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure or Microsoft Azure. It simply means that you are paying, this service actually means that you are paying for services that are being hosted by a company somewhere in the world, which has its physical infrastructure set up providing these services. So these companies have physical infrastructure. And in this physical infrastructure, they've already configured the networking side, the space. So you only pay for those services that are already there, and they provide those services to you based on the payment that you have agreed. So that's why you hear the people say servers are sitting in the cloud. Okay, our clone is completed. So we're gonna go again from KMT temp 16, make another clone for our second DC. So we're gonna, which means we're gonna make another copy clone. Okay, current state. Okay, create a full clone. That's right. And then we're gonna browse. To the data store. All right, VMware KMT DC2. So I'm gonna copy so that then the folder name can match the virtual machine name, and then finish. All right. So to get back to the big topic of servers sitting in the cloud. When you hear people talk about servers sitting in the cloud, they simply say they are virtual machines. These are virtual machines sitting on some physical infrastructures somewhere there, and everything is configured for you. So that's the whole thing. When you hear people say we have servers sitting in the cloud, these servers are sitting on some physical infrastructure somewhere there, and everything is configured for you. So the main three that we have Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, or Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. But the two that you encounter a lot of companies going for, it's either Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or Microsoft Azure. So now you have also companies that have on-premise servers. They have some on-premise servers, which means they have their own infrastructure in their own data centers, and they are also having some infrastructure they are outsourcing, or having some servers sitting in another company somewhere in the world. So that's why we hear the term cloud-based servers. Cloud-based servers. Then you have on-premises servers and cloud-based servers. So when a company has these two put together, that's when we speak about the hybrid model. So you have some servers on-prem, and you have other servers in the cloud. So that's called a hybrid model. But in that case, the on-prem servers is your responsibility. So if it breaks, it's up to you to fix. If you have a backup issue, it's to the team to look after it and resolve. So whatever happened in your data center is your responsibility. But a cloud-based service is the responsibility of the provider, such as Microsoft or Amazon Web Services, because that's what you're paying them for. So it's their responsibility if you something happen with the servers that you're using in their data centers. It's their responsibility to make sure that these servers are actually functioning as per service level agreement. So to get back to what I was explaining, a clone, as you are doing right now, is a copy of an existing virtual machine. So as you can see, we have option of choosing either a linked clone or a full clone. So while you're cloning or while you're making a copy, so these are the two options that you have in VMware Workstation, I mean. So that's what I was trying to explain as we copying or cloning our okay. So the operation is completed successfully, and then I'm gonna make the last one from KMT temp, go to VM, manage clone, next, create a full clone, next. So I have already made VMware. Then this one will be sitting in KMT AMC M folder. So I'm gonna copy this one, the folder name, and then make sure that it matches the virtual machine, and then make clone. So once we are done with the cloning process, now the next step, we'll have to Sysprep the first DC, because that's what we're going to be doing right now. The implementation and installation of Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, or ACCM, that will be a discussion in another video session. But for today, we will be focusing more on implementing DNS, or making our server that we have right here, the KMT DC1 and the KMT DC2 domain controllers. So we're going to be having these two machines, these two servers, and make them domain controllers. Why am I having a second one? As per Microsoft best practice, it's always, if you have a DC or one DC, it's always best to have another DC, so that in the event of one, the primary DC goes down, the second can actually take over while servicing the users, the end users, while the team is busy trying to sort out and figure out what's happened with the first DC. So that's why I'm trying to make it more real and practical, even though I'm doing it in a lab environment. So I'm trying to make it more real and practical. Okay guys, here we are. So we have our cloned machine, or cloned virtual machines, or virtual computers. We have KMT DC1. But now when you look at our setup, we said KMT DC1 should have 6 gig of RAM. So now we're going to increase this. You can increase the RAM while the machine is running, but to decrease, you have to power off the virtual machine. So now we're going to open the calculator. So you're going to go 124 times 6. Then we have 6144. So we have 6 gig of RAM. So we have met our requirements. So DC1 has now, as you can see, it has 6 gig of RAM. So KMT DC2, we said it should have 2 gig. So we're gonna select the machine, the virtual machine, click edit, and then bring it down again by calculator. Then 124 times 2, then we have 2048. Cool. Now the next step, we have to Sysprep, as we said, our virtual machine, and then we're gonna give DC1 the static IP address of 192.168.0.3. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, as we said, the next step in our path is to Sysprep this virtual machine. So we right click on the start menu, click on run, and then Sysprep. Okay, so you have the application, so I right click and run it as administrator. So here we have audit mode and system out of box experience. That's like when you're running bare metal installation. So I'm gonna generalize and then click OK. Okay, so there we go. We have a refreshed, we have a brand new OS, like if we had mounted an ISO. So that was that's what Sysprep did. So here we're gonna choose location, accept and password. A strong password, of course. Now this is now for us to log on. What we need to do, we need to go either here, one or so if I want to make it full screen, there we go. We have our server manager, but now I'm gonna take care of a few things here. I don't want the server manager to automatically pop up. So manager property, don't start server manager automatically at logon. Click OK, close it. Just want to show you something. If you click at the local server, you see this template, this computer does no longer have the KMT DC1. So we need to change the name of the computer, so that of the host, so that it can match with the name that is on the VM. So I want the computer name to be changed so that it can match with this one here, KMT DC1. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna click on the name, click change, and what is it? It's gonna be, the computer will be KMT DC1. Click OK. It's gonna ask me to restart. I'm not gonna restart now because I wanna just take care of a few things. I'll restart later. Here I'm gonna enable remote desktop. Okay, it's enabled. Now you see IPv4 address assigned by DHCP. So we said, if you look at our configuration, we said that we wanted this computer to have a static IP address. So we wanted to give the address 192.168.0.3. So that's what we're gonna give to this server. So I'm gonna click there, double click again, go to properties. I will disable IPv6, so I'm gonna check and then go to IP version 4, click property. Instead of obtain an IP address automatically, I'm gonna use the following address. So I'm gonna type 192.168.0.3. So we have made that requirement, and the default gateway is 192.168.0.1. So where is it going to resolve? It's going to resolve to the same default gateway, or the router. It's going to be 192.168.0.1. Okay, close and close. So what else is left again? So we have given the server the right name. We have provided a static IP address based on the router. Check the time. Okay, time zone, that's right. Remote desktop is enabled, and then let's check power configuration. So we're gonna go click on the control panel, click there, power option, perform a change, never. Alright, and this one, never. That's right, save changes. Now let's go ahead and restart our computer, our server, so that it can be KMT DC1. Okay, let's log in. So now let's launch the server manager, because now the next step, we're going to install the Active Directory domain service role, and then we'll promote this server to be a domain controller. So we're gonna launch server manager, so we can do it either here or there. So we have two places, so we can go to manage, click add roles and feature, or configure this server, add roles and feature. So we're gonna click add roles and feature, skip this page by default, click next. Role based or feature based installation, click next. So the name is KMT DC1, the IP address matches the one that was in our requirement. So click next. What roles do we want to install? We want to install Active Directory domain services role. You can add features, and I always like to also add the DNS server role. And click next. Next. Restart the destination server automatically if required. Check that box. Yes, and install. So installation started on KMT DC1. Configuration required. Installation succeeded on KMT DC1. So fortunately it didn't ask me to restart. So what I do, the next step is to promote this server to a domain controller. So you can either do it here, or you can click on start, click on search, type DC promo, there we go. You can run this command DC promo, or you can do it here. So we're gonna do it here. So I'm gonna click this one. It's a brand new forest, so we're not gonna add a domain controller to an existing domain. We're not gonna add a new domain to an existing forest, but we are having add a new forest. So click there. What is our domain name? The domain name that we purchased from GoDaddy is KMTrainer.co.za. You can follow along with your own local domain. You don't have to purchase one, but I did purchase one for just testing purposes. So our domain is KMTrainer.co.za. So I'm gonna type it there, KMTrainer.co.za. Click next. Make sure you type it right. Okay. What is the forest functional level? The forest functional level is Windows Server 2016. Let's check. Okay, if you have had servers in your environment which can't be up to 2016, but maybe you're running 2008 R2 or 2012 R2, then you can choose this option. But in this case, we're gonna be having all our servers running Windows Server 2016, so the forest functional level should be Windows Server 2016. Even with Windows Server 2019, the forest functional level is Windows Server 2016. Domain functional level is Windows 2016. So directory service restore mode password, you make sure that you create a strong password just in case if you want to restore. And then click next. An allegation for this DNS server cannot be created because the authoritative parent zone cannot be found. I don't care. I'm not concerned about this. Create DNS delegation. I don't need that one. Click next. NetBIOS domain name. It's gonna give us KMTrainer. There we go. So click next. Click next. Next. So never have a domain controller with a dynamic IP address because they are constantly changing. Okay, all prerequisite checks passed successfully, and then click install. Now we are promoting this server to be a domain controller which is gonna have its database, which is Active Directory database. And what is AD? AD is a Microsoft technology used for managing and administering resources on the network to authenticate against the domain. Once we have a domain controller, then we'll have a database. database of whatever is inside. So whoever want to log into our network will have to be authenticated. So to check his credentials to find out if he claims that he is. As we saw, a forest is a top level and the domain sits within the forest. You can have multiple domains within a forest. This server was successfully configured as a domain controller. Click close and restart. Yeah guys, our DC has restarted. Now we need to log in using the credentials. So now we should be able to have Active Directory tools at our disposal, as our server has been promoted to being a domain controller. Okay, we have Active Directory Domain Services, we have DNS, we have File and Storage Services. Now, if you go to Tools, you see we have Active Directory Administrative Center, Active Directory Domain and Trust, Active Directory Module for Windows PowerShell, Active Directory Site and Services, Active Directory Users and Computers, ADSI Edit. So let's click Active Directory Users and Computers. So you can see our domain, it's KMTrainer.co.za. So we have a bunch of stuff in there. So what I like to do most of the time is to have these tools on the task bar. So what I do, you can see we have Windows administrative tools. So what I do, I take Active Directory Users and Computers and then pin it to taskbar. What is DNS? Yeah, pin it to taskbar. So we have a bunch of tools here to administer our Active Directory. So now what I do most of the time, I make sure that I change the enterprise admin to something more meaningful. What do we do? Users. So we have administrator. So if you click properties, member of, so you can see this is a member of administrators, domain admins, domain users, enterprise admins, group policy creator, schema admins. We speak about this later on. And then we're gonna change this one to something meaningful. So I'm gonna call it, I'm gonna rename it Archangel. Archangel. Okay, that's right. So display name, I'm gonna call it super admin. Our full name is Archangel, and and then copy, paste. All right, that's right. So that's now our enterprise admin will be displayed as super admin, but the full name is Archangel. Okay, so we're gonna log off and log in. Sign out, and then we're gonna sign in with, click on other user, and then type Archangel with the password. It's just a matter of security. Instead of somebody might hack in with administrator and try the word administrator and then try to get access to your domain. So Active Directory users and subcomputers. Okay, there we go. So we have now Archangel. If you click properties, display name is super admin, and then is a member of administrators, domain admins, domain users, enterprise admin, group policy, creator owner, schema admins, and then you click OK. One more thing also I like to change is the default site name. I'm gonna click Windows Administrative Tools, Active Directory, Active Directory Sites and Services. Okay, let me click. Okay, we have only one site. If you had like 3-4 regions, then this one I'm gonna name it, just name the site, change and name it Joburg JHP. So that's the name of our site. So if we had another one in Durban and another in Cape Town, then each we could actually be able to locate these geographically. So whoever comes joined will actually find this site. We have now an Active Directory database into our domain controller. We've managed to make this server a domain controller. Now what as per our setup, if you remember, we had to make KMTDC2 a second DC. So this second DC will have to be joined to the primary domain controller. That's when, once we are done, that's when we're going to be talking about the roles and how to check the replication between the two. So I'm trying to make it as practical as possible. So what I'm going to do now is to Sysprep KMTDC2. So I'm going to power on this virtual machine because I'm done with the first DC. That's for now. So just to remember, we need to match our setup. So we said that DC2 will have 2 GB of RAM, 50 gig of hard drive space. No, I made a mistake. It had to have 100 gig of disk space. Sorry. So right click on the start, run, Sysprep, click OK. Sysprep, right click, run as administrator, generalize, click OK. So the purpose is to have two DCs for fault tolerance as per Microsoft best practices. Then we test the replication between the two DCs, and then we check which DC order the flexible single master operation role, and then we start playing a bit with some tasks that we need to do in Active Directory in our domain controller. So I'm gonna speak about a few little things while the Sysprep is busy doing its thing. So we have now on our server manager, I'm on KMT DC1. As you can see, we go to server manager, we have tools, so we have Active Directory, domain and trust. This one is actually gonna come into play when you're gonna use it, or it's gonna come into play when you like a company is merged or acquired and you want to share resources between the two domains. So that's when you're going to be using this tool for management and access, so that you can have either trust, one-way trust, or two-way trust. So with this one, Active Directory Administrative Center, it's actually the same setup of what we have like Active Directory users and computer. If you take a look, so we have built-in with computers, domain controllers, foreign security principle, manage service account, and users. So with Active Directory Administrative Center, you can also enable the recycle bin. So why do we enable the recycle bin? So that if we delete accidentally something or some object into our AD, we can go and retrieve it. So are you sure you want to perform this action? Once the recycle bin has been enabled, it cannot be disabled. Yes, you want to enable recycle bin. Click OK. Please refresh the administrative center now. Okay. As you can see, there is no way we can disable it. So if we delete something, we can come quickly here and retrieve it. So let's check what's happening on KMT DC2. Okay, that's we are experiencing the out of the box experience. So we're in AC. That's right. Okay, click next, accept. Let's log in. Same stuff that I did with this one. So I'm gonna go to manage, server manager property, check this box, don't set server manager automatically, log on, click OK. Now what did we say? We said that KMT DC2 will have an IP address 192.168.0.4. so let's go and give it a static IP, and then the name should be KMT DC2, same as the one on top of the VM. computer name should be matching this name here, KMTDC2. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna change the name and name it KMTDC2, and then click OK. Click OK, close, restart later. So the next thing that we need to check is click on IPv4, double click, Ethernet, properties, disable IPv6, click on IPv4 properties, and then give 192.168.0.4 default gateway 192.168.0.1. What is it going to resolve? Preferred DNS server. Check. Let's go to KMTDC1. IPv4 properties, so we have 127.0.0.1. So but in this case I wanted to resolve to this IP, which is 192.168.0.3. so 192.168.0.3. Okay, alternate DNS 127.0.0.1. Let's close. Right, and what else again? Right, so we have IP, we have changed the computer name, so let's go and restart our server. You can see your device is up to date. Last checked yesterday 3:43 p.m. so no update. As I was telling you earlier on, I said from the template, what I did, I made a template and I downloaded all the latest patches from Microsoft, and it's all these machines are coming from that template. So after, as you have seen, the process of cloning. So now the next step is to join this DC2 to our primary DC1. But before we start joining, we need to install their ADDS role. Okay, skip this by default. Next, role base, right, Active Directory domain services. That's true. Click next, 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 restart if required, and click install. So let's let it do its thing. Okay, promote this server. It didn't ask for restart. Promote the server to a domain controller. Okay, now in this case, what are we going to do? We're going to join this KMT DC2 to KMT DC1 because we already have a domain in our environment. So add a domain to an existing domain. Add a domain, add a new domain to an existing forest, or add a new forest. We've already a forest. So what are we going to do? We're going to add a domain controller to an existing domain. So what is our domain? KMTrainer Archangel there we go. I went and found it. KMTrainer.co.za. That's right. So let's click next. Click next. Any domain controller. So you can see we have kmt.dc.kmtrainer.0.za. So we're gonna just leave it. Replicate from any domain controller. Click next. 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 So all the prerequisite checks pass successfully, and then click install. Close. So let's go on to KMT DC1 and see what happened here. We should have this computer, this DC, into our list of domain controllers. Yep, there we go. So we have KMT DC2. So we have two DC, KMT DC1 and KMT DC2. Alright, now let's log in into our DC. Remember, Archangel, that's the name of our super admin, enterprise admin. Sign into each domain, KMTrainer. So we have met the requirement. So we have completed. DC1 and DC2. Now let's check what we have here. So we have DC1, KMTrainer.0.za, and then the tools. We have the same tools as in DC1. So let's open Active Directory users and computers. Okay. Active Directory site to check the name of our site. Site. Yes, we got it. That's Jobbik, same one that we had here. Okay, so on DC1 we have exactly the same thing on DC2. So now the very first thing that we do once we have set up our domain controller is to check the replication status. So how do we go about it? So we go to Start, right click on Start, command prompt. No, let's check command prompt, CMD. Run as administrator, and then we type a command, rep admin sync all. Okay, then we have a problem. So we need to make sure that sync all reported the following. You can see sync all reported the following errors. So what normally I do, I take K1 DC1, I'll go to open network sharing and Ethernet properties, IPv4 IP version 4 property, and then from here I'm gonna prefer DNS. So I'm gonna use the DNS, the IP address of KMT DC2, which is 192.168.0.4. okay, the 192.168.0.4, and here alternate DNS server, I'm gonna resolve, it's gonna resolve it to itself, 192.168.0.3. click OK, close, and then I'm gonna go to KMTDC2, open network and sharing center, Ethernet properties, IPv4 properties, and then a preferred DNS. We'll be using the IP address of KMTDC1, and here I'm gonna use, it's gonna resolve to itself, 192, okay, 192.168.0.4. okay, now let's go and test the replication again. So I'm on KMTDC2 CMD. CMD run as administrator, and then let's run the command repadmin sync all. Now we are successful. As you can see, it says callback message, sync all finished, sync all terminated with no errors. There we go. So once you have set up your DCs, make sure that you don't have any trouble when you're running the testing of replication within your network. Okay, let's go to DC1 and then tab and test again. Voila! So we have successfully made sure that the replication is smoothly running between the two DCs. Okay, now the next step would be to check where the FISMO role reside, because as per Microsoft best practice, you don't have to have all the FISMO role, the flexible single master operation role, into one place. So you have to split them. So the forest roles have to be on one DC, and the domain roles have to be on another DC. But that's a discussion for another day. All right, now we have our two domain controllers working, and the replication is perfect. As you can see, sync call terminated with no error. We can try again. Let's see. That's right. So if we go on DC2, let's test the replication again. Terminated with no errors. But how do we really prove that the replication is working? So I'm on DC2. I'm gonna open Active Directory users and computers, and then here I'm gonna create a user. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new user. So I'm gonna name it John Mac. So I want to make sure that once I create this user on DC2, it is to show this user has to appear on DC1. That's the whole purpose of replication. So just say testing. We're testing just the replication. User cannot change password. Password never expires. And click finish. So when I click on the user OU, you have John Mac. So John Mac is created on DC2, but because we have a replication going between the two DCs, then I should see John Mac on DC1. So opening DC1. Let's open Active Directory users and computers. It's actually open here. Okay, cool. There we go. Users. So you see John Mac has appeared on DC1. So our replication is working 100%. So then the next step will be to locate the FISMO role. Where are the FISMO role, which stand for flexible single master operation roles? and we will be talking about what they do and how they work. But let's just open our command prompt and let's run this command to check which DC hold the FISMA role. So the command that I use is netdom query FISMA. Okay, now you see we have 5 FISMA role. So we have Schema Master, it's sitting on DC1. Domain Naming Master is sitting on DC1. PDC on DC1. Read Port Manager on DC1. So Infrastructure Master is sitting on DC1. So all these 5 FISMA role sit on DC1. But as per Microsoft best practices, it is recommended that we place the domain roles onto one DC and the forest roles onto another DC. So now let's talk a bit about these FISMA role and what they do. Okay, FISMA role. These roles give you confidence that your domain will be able to perform the primary function of authenticating users and permission without interruption. So they make sure that everything that happens within your environment is actually going well. So that's the purpose of FISMA role. So where do we start? We start with the Schema Master. So there are 5 FISMA roles. So we have 2 per forest and 3 per domain. So the forest one, we have Schema Master, Domain Naming Master. These are the 2 FISMA roles that are for the domain. So then for the forest, sorry. So we have PDC, Read, and Infrastructure Master. These are domain roles. So as per Microsoft best practice, it is recommended that these 3 domain role, FISMA domain roles, sit on one DC, and the 2 forest FISMA role sits on another DC. So what are they doing? Schema Master. Let's start with Schema Master role. Yeah, Schema Master, it manages the read-write copy of your Active Directory schema. So the schema define all the attributes, things like employee ID, phone number, email address, and login name that you can apply to an object in your Active Directory. So let's see. Okay, so we have a user. We go to property. So here we have telephone, organization, account, address. You have street, PO box, city, state, province, zip code, country, region. So all these, the one who is responsible for all these attributes, the role that actually makes sure that these things get updated, is the Schema Master. So whether you delete, update, is the Schema Master role that is responsible, and it's 1 per forest. So Domain Naming Master, let's go back and speak a little bit about Domain Naming Master. Domain Naming Master makes sure that you don't create a second domain in the same forest with the same name. So that's making sure you have only a unique domain name in your forest. That's why. So it makes sure that the name is only unique into the domain, into the forest. So that's so domain naming master is also, we have only one per forest. So you have schema master and domain naming master. These are the two FISM role per forest. One per forest, one per forest. So we have PDC. Let's speak about PDC, primary domain controller. PDC is the authoritative DC in the domain. The PDC emulator respond to authentication requests, change of passwords, and also manages group policies. Yeah, object. So PDC emulator is actually the one responsible to respond to authentication requests, change of passwords, and manage group policy objects. And also it is responsible for the time in your domain controller or in your environment. So the PDC emulator tells everyone else what time it is. So it's one of the most important FISM role. So that's why it's good to be PDC. And then let's look at the RAID pool manager. The RAID pool manager is actually is the one responsible for assigning blocks of security identifiers, like SID, so to different DCs, so they can use newly created objects. That's why you remember when we did Sysprep a machine, that machine has to give us a very unique SID. So because each object in Active Directory is an SID, and the last few digits of the SID are the relative portion. So in order, the one responsible to make sure that in order to keep multiple objects from having the same SID or seed, is the RAID master that grants each DC the privilege of assigning certain seeds. And finally, let's speak about the infrastructure master. Infrastructure master role translate global unique identifiers, seed, and distinguish names between domains. You can read more when you go to Microsoft website. This is just a brief of what these roles are doing into our R4 into our domain. So as I was saying earlier on, we need to transfer the tree, because we have two DCs. We have KMT DC1 and KMT DC2. Then we need to transfer PDC, RAID pool manager, and infrastructure manager on KMT DC2, because right now all these 5 FISM roles are sitting on DC1, 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 as you can see. So now, to keep in line with Microsoft recommended best practice, we will have to split these roles. So I'm on KMT DC1, which has all these 5 FISM roles. So now for me to transfer the domain wide roles, so I have to go to DC2, and then on KMTrainer, the top of the domain, or task operations masters, and click change. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, then PDC, change. Are you sure? Yes. infrastructure, change, are you sure? Yes, and then close. Now let's go to KMT DC1 and check again to see where these roles are residing now. So tab on my keyboard, so we have successfully placed the domain wide FISMO role onto DC1. As you can see, PDC read, pool manager, and infrastructure manager are now residing on DC2, DC2, DC2. Then Schema Master and domain naming master are residing on DC1. So that's completed. Let's check, let's find out and test the same thing. netdom query FISMO. Okay, so we have Schema Master sitting on DC1, and PDC and the read pool manager sitting, infrastructure manager sitting on DC2. So we are now in line with Microsoft recommended best practice for placement of FISMO role. Okay, the next step is to configure the time synchronization with an external NTP server. So with an external time server, because if the time is not syncing properly with your client into your domain, you might have a lot of problems. So to configure the root PDC with an authoritative time source and avoid widespread time skew as per Microsoft best practice. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna configure the time, because we know now the PDC is sitting or residing on our KMT DC2. So now from here we're gonna configure the time. Okay, command prompt, just to make sure. I'm on KMT DC2, CMD, run as administrator, and then we have netdom query FISMO. Okay, so the PDC is the one, as you remember, we said that the PDC is responsible also for time into our domain. So we're gonna configure the time with an external time server. So let's run this command, ds.msc, and press enter. It's gonna open Active Directory users and computers. Okay, this is my domain, KMTrainer.co.za. okay, now let's check where our domain pulls its time. Let's type this command, w32tm /query /status. Okay, so you see the source is KMT, so which is DC1, so it's pulling its time from DC1. It's the BIOS time, in fact. So we want this to be synchronizing with an external time server and then the client will synchronize with the domain, which is in this case the PDC, because it's responsible for time. And then if we have a problem with time sync on one of the client or one of the machine in our environment with the PDC, then we might have like sometime Exchange won't be working. If time email Outlook client won't actually might not properly receive its email if there is a problem with time synchronization into your environment. So that's why we like to sync our time from our forest with an external time server. So that's what we will be setting now. Okay, we are on KMTDC2. So the next step, because as you can see the current source is KMTDC1 for time. Now this is not recommended as per Microsoft best practice in a domain environment. So then what we're gonna do now, we're gonna type this command, w32 tm config manual peer list. So time.windows.com sync from flags manual reliable yes /update. So it's w32tm /config /manual peer list time.windows.com sync from flags manual /reliable yes update, and let's press enter. The commands completed successfully. Now let's see, let's test. w32 tm query status. So as you can see, it says local CMOS clock. So local CMOS clock, that's where the time is being pulled from. Okay, so now we want this to synchronize with an external time source, so an external time server. Okay, just want to restart to be sure that the time is synchronizing with the external time server. as you can see now, it was just a matter of restarting the server so that it could synchronize with time.windows.com. So we have successfully synchronized our DCs to an external time server. So we're gonna check again on DC1. CMD as administrator, W32 TM query status. Okay, so we have successfully synchronized the time with an external time server. So you can see source now is time.windows.com. So now our domain or our forest is synchronizing with an external time server. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share. Until next time.